Welcome to the Nick Bryant podcast. Today, my guest is Paz de la Huerta, and she began a modeling career in her adolescence and became a runway model before turning to acting. In 1998, she made her film debut, The Object of My Affection, and the next year appeared opposite Michael Caine and Charlize Theron in Cider House Rules. In 2009, Paz was in HBO's Boardwalk Empire that was set in Atlantic City during the Prohibition era. How are you doing today, Paz?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. You grew up in New York, downtown New York.
Yes, I was born at Beth Israel Hospital, and we first lived in Soho at 421 West Broadway, and then moved to Tribeca.
And you began modeling at a pretty young age.
Yes, I started modeling and acting very young, and I did it as a way to make money to get away from my family. But little did I know I was being trafficked by my family to Weinstein. And that was all a part of the career. And I never even saw my earnings. And I became like a prisoner of my family up until only 3 years ago.
And you met Weinstein with Cider House Rules.
Yes, that was the second film I did, but I met him before because he was our neighbor in Tribeca, and he saw me walking down the street. And I believe, and I would like in a perfect world, the authorities to interview Weinstein, that he became obsessed with me. And I got casted in the Cider House Rules as Mary Agnes. I remember being on set, and my first memory of him was on that set at a scene at the train station. And then my mother rented an apartment with a see-through glass door that looked into my bedroom, literally a view of me looking into the mirror at 13 years old to Miramax. And that's when I believe the trafficking started with Weinstein by my mother. I know I was sold to him by my mother.
And you ultimately received a settlement from Weinstein.
Well, my family really corrupted my case during long before the Me Too movement. I went to a journalist after the second time Weinstein would rape me at 311 Greenwich Street, where he spied on me as a little girl, which one of many corrupt therapists that Judith hired, who was my mother, convinced me to move back into the hallway where I know he spied on me as a child, where he would rape me twice. And I believe he had some sick fantasy of having me in the room that he made porn of me as a little girl. And I would like a proper investigation to be done. But yes, long before the Me Too, I went to a journalist. I got fired from Boardwalk Empire, and I got blackmailed into making Nurse 3D, a movie I did not want to do. But how did I get to taking the Weinstein settlement? My mother had many corrupt lawyers stealing from me with her, my earnings and my lawsuit money. Once I did the plant medicine, it recalibrated my brain. I realized what was happening. I got rid of the lawyer. I took the Weinstein settlement money to get safe, with the intention of just taking that to get away from my family, who I know are the people that put Weinstein in my life.
And you took an African root, a medicinal root, and had a spiritual experience.
But it wasn't until I did the Iboga in Madrid, like 3.5 years ago, that it recalibrated my brain and made me piece together these insane events in my life, and that I had to run far, far away and get away from them and get safe. And I wrote my memoir on it, which now Sam Kashner is going to co-write my memoir. So I wrote that timeline on it.
I have read your timeline, and you started There was incest pretty early on with your father.
Yes. And my mother. My mother also sexually abused me.
And people think that incest is a rarity, but conservative numbers say that it happens 15 to 20% of Americans have been incested, and some numbers go as high as 20% for underage girls that have been molested. So it's not completely outside the realm of possibility that Paz was molested by both parents and they trafficked you.
Yes, and they trafficked me. Yes.
And that happens too. And you were trafficked to Weinstein. Were you trafficked to other men?
Yes, only 3.5 years ago, I was also simultaneously Judith and my godmother, Christina DeHeron, had been stealing millions from me since I was a child and never saw any of my earnings. I had no money. I was living in Madrid and I couldn't barely afford to eat. My father's last assault was only 9/11/2021. And after that, some friends put together some money and I ran away to Los Angeles. I got rid of Aaron Filler and I took the Weinstein settlement, but I never got to testify against Weinstein. And they really went extreme lengths to make sure I wouldn't, because given the chance to testify against Weinstein, I would put my mother in jail.
And with Weinstein, you had to sign an NDA, I believe, where you couldn't really disclose the particulars of what Weinstein did to you.
Well, that was manipulated and enforced upon me then by Aaron Filler if I did do that. But I didn't. And they many times tried to get me to sign. Judith, for years, her obsession with the non-disparagement agreement, so I never signed that. So I'll say whatever I want. At this point, I'm more interested in putting my mother in jail than Weinstein.
Your mother is part of a organization that ostensibly helps women in third world countries, which is very different than how you describe her. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, it's her cover up. Her cover up is that she, like most narcissists, is that she wants to be known for good things when she's evil. So her cover up is that she works for the Population Council and advocates for women's rights in third world countries. This is, I happen to have evidence, I sent it to you, that she stole millions from me. So when we're talking about how she exploited me, we're talking emotionally, physically, and financially. I would love to have a detective interview Harvey Weinstein and ask him point blank, did this woman sell you her daughter? And if so, for how much? Because just based on the evidence of the money that she stole from me, which is millions, I only need to look at my SAG history residual report to see that. And I'm seeking a good New York civil attorney to recover whatever I can that she stole. It's a cover up. And I don't know. I think if there was a deeper investigation, maybe I'm not the only girl she trafficked. Who knows what she does with those other girls in third world countries. Once she asked my best friend James Orlando to make her a sleeping bag for sex trafficked victims, which we both thought was really weird.
And you attempted to litigate against your parents in a Spanish court. Your father is part of the Spanish nobility.
Yes.
How did that work out? How did that play out?
Well, I was telling you before we recorded, at the time I got those lawyers, I was too traumatized to step foot back in Madrid. And of course, my parents lied when they had to testify. And that case is archived, but I'm saving money to file a new case in Madrid where the last crimes took place only 3 years ago.
We hear of stories like yours all the time where Hollywood is essentially uses young women and, like gum that's lost its flavor, just spits it out. And you were caught up in that really evil world.
Well, I had no safe place to go to. My family were the ones that pimped me out and then went criminal lengths to cover up their crime.